Hello there. What's going on, everybody? Today, I'm going to be sitting down with Luke Eddy from Fantasy Flight Games, and we're going to be talking all the new stuff coming out for Star Wars Legion. But before we jump in, I just want to remind you, if you are new here, there's still time left to enter to win the giveaway. All you have to do is be a subscriber and leave a comment to enter to win that $25 Amazon gift card. Also, if you are looking to help support the channel, there's all kinds of links down in the description below for some of the new merch we've got down there, Patreon, follow me on social media, Discord. All of that stuff is down in the description below. But big thanks to Luke Eddy for sitting down for this interview. All right, guys, let's jump into the interview. All right, so we are sitting down with Luke Eddy. How are you doing, Luke?
I'm doing pretty good, all things considered. Still plugging away at making those Legion expansions.
That's awesome. And then, as a big fan of Legion, I definitely appreciate it. If for those of you who don't know, if you wouldn't mind, can you tell us, what you do at Fantasy Flight Games and what that consists of a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So at Fantasy Flight, I'm a game developer for Star Wars Legion, which means I design and develop the expansions for the game. And Alex Davey, who designed the core game itself, and I trade off on sort of batches of products that we work on. So the very first set that I worked on was kind of a Wave 2, which was the chunk of products that included Han Solo and Boba Fett and the Scout Troopers and the Commandos. And then from there on, I did most of the Rebel and Imperial expansions up to the Clone Wars, which, Alex was the main designer for that Clone Wars core set. And then we traded off from there. And then most recently, the set of products that I got to work on are the ones we're going to talk about today.
I know, this is very exciting. I got some of the pictures up ahead, but before, I got some general things to talk about first. But we just had Gen Con. It's so exciting to have all of this. Do you have any, a favorite unit that you've worked on so far?
Well, it's kind of tough because I think in a lot of things you're always a little bit biased towards, newness.
Mm-hmm.
And again, maybe I don't know if you want to jump into this stuff right away, but I have to say, designing Maul and Anakin were two of the funnest units to design, and they came together really well because they're themed so strong.
So I have a lot of questions about Maul and Anakin for a little bit later, but I'm super excited about these two. And Anakin's cool. I think we all knew Anakin was coming, but I think a lot of people weren't sure about Maul because he was in Episode 1 that wasn't, or at least Darth Maul, right? Like it was but then in the Clone Wars he wasn't really separatist, so maybe he won't show up. So for me it was like a huge, finally, yes, we got him. Everything else now doesn't matter. We finally got Maul, so that's really exciting. But so as an employee and as a developer, do you actually get to play? Do you actually?
Absolutely.
Okay, that was a tough one. So speaking of playing, who at Fantasy Flight is the best Legion player?
Well, so usually the person I play against the most is Alex because, of course, we've got to play test the stuff we're working on. We're going to get firsthand experience. And we have a little bit of a rivalry sometimes. There was a long stretch there where I was winning games in a row, and Alex kept reminding me of it and was like, "Hey, man, I can't catch a break here." But then he got to come back, and on the I'd say, relatively speaking, Alex and I are on pretty equal footing. I don't know if I'd say one of us is better than the other.
All right. Well, if it counts or if it'll hold up, I don't know if it'll hold up in a court of law, but I'm kind of throwing down the gauntlet that I want to challenge either you or Alex, whoever's on top, at the next Gen Con or LVO or Adepticon or whenever the stars align, whenever it'll work. I'm throwing down the gauntlet now, so we'll see. We'll see if we can make that happen one of these days. But chances are, I'll get my butt kicked publicly, but I'm okay with that. All right. So another kind of design or development question. Have there ever been any really cards? Because now the game's getting kind of deep now. We're getting to this point where there's 4 factions. There's a lot of cards out there. Have there ever been any cards that interacted crazily or any kind of things that weren't expected?
Well, kind of the boring answer is no, not really. I think you play X-Wing. There's there's a bigger ecosystem of upgrades and things going on there. There's more neutral upgrades in that game. But with Legion, it's a relatively small number of really truly neutral upgrades that almost any unit could take. So we have a pretty good idea of what interactions are going to be. What is interesting to see, though, and what is sometimes you have an idea of, but you can't always 100% predict, is what the community is going to gravitate towards. What is going to rise to the surface as oh, this is competitive, or this combination of cards, So, there certainly haven't been any interactions that surprise us that they exist, but there's been some that have surprised us that players really made more effective, perhaps, than we expected.
I'm thinking of that mortar relay kind of combo chain that was.
Yeah, that was one.
Yeah, I remember seeing that and saying, yeah, this could work, but I don't think I'd want to base my whole list around it. And it's, other people just did, and I was like, okay, and it's interesting. Yeah, it's interesting when things like that happen. So I want to kind of take us forward now into Gen Con and some of the new releases, because I think the bulk of this is probably going to be, at least the bulk of my interest is more on Anakin and Maul. I mean, we also have the personnel expansion, so I'm not going to leave them out, but Anakin and Maul are really the flash for me, So so first question, I want to start talking about Anakin, but first I've got to jump in with Maul. For those of you guys who don't know, I have a double critical podcast, and it was all founded on the idea that, what if Darth Maul came to the game before we knew he came and had double critical, surge to double critical. So I've got to ask, and I know this is it's a probing question because his unit card hasn't been revealed yet, but you can shoot me down if you need to, but I have to at least ask: is Maul going to have surge to double critical?
Oh yeah, absolutely. We just stole your idea, Crabbok.
You stole my.
No,
it's totally yours. You can have it. You can have it.
No, sorry. Unfortunately, Maul does not have double critical. But sorry.
No, it's okay.
You can keep the idea.
Okay. You guys can use it at some point too, because it's
a
cool idea.
Okay, all right.
It would require a whole bunch of rules reference, and does a dodge cancel the whole die or just one of the results, and how do you mark it for rerolls and all of that stuff? I don't know. It might be more trouble than it's worth, but it might not be. It might be super cool. Okay. So all right. So we got new Force users coming to these factions, and I've always kind of wondered from a design perspective, what it's like trying to come up with new Force users. Is there a worry that they're going to be, or Saber users or Force users? Palpatine was way different, but he was kind of the outlier, right? But so new lightsaber wielders, they have a lot of things in common. And is there a fear that they're going to be too common, or what's that design process like? How much can you talk about there?
Yeah, that's a good question. And there's one easy way to differentiate them a little bit, and that was what Alex came up with Obi-Wan, where he has a keyword unique to his lightsaber mastery. So that's a really easy route to add a little bit of flavor, adding one keyword that's going to just appear on one unit, maybe another one in the future.
Yeah.
That's relatively low impact rules overhead, especially if you can include the full reminder text on the card. And the other thing it does too is, from a design perspective, is that card text space is prime real estate. There's only so many keywords you can give to characters, and as like a standard Jedi, there's kind of a couple abilities you expect. Usually, you expect jump, you expect deflect, you expect immune pierce. You expect some sort of charge or relentless. That's already 4 keywords.
Yes.
So sometimes what's nice is using that lightsaber mastery to combine a couple of those maybe in a different sort of flavor. So that creates some space for us. So just making up a new keyword is kind of cheating, but that's a way to differentiate the Force users.
So is lightsaber mastery a new keyword? Because I don't think I've seen that.
So it's Obi-Wan has Surasu mastery.
Oh, I see. So those format. I thought you were talking in generally lightsaber mastery, just a blanket skill.
Yep. Yeah. And then it's what does Dooku have? Is that Ataru? I think.
I have to pull it up, but
I think it's Ataru. And then Anakin is going to have the Gemso, and Maul is going to have Joyo. So both of those are unique to those characters, and that was probably, from a design perspective, the easiest way to differentiate those.
Sure.
But you're right. We want to look for other ways to do it as well. And sometimes that comes out in their command cards.
Right.
that's a good way to do it, especially with Anakin, who we'll talk about, who had a whole plethora of keywords I wanted to give him, and one of the ways to solve that problem was just put them all on command cards.
Oh, I know. They look really cool, and I talked a lot about these command cards in the last Double Critical, and I was just like, oh, there's so many things. I can't wait for the full spoiler too. So let's talk a little bit more about Anakin. He's coming into the game. He has this episode 3 appearance, right? And so like I think a lot of people were thinking, hey, Obi-Wan kind of had his Clone Wars armor, but Anakin's now, instead of like in Clone Wars armor, he kind of looks more like he did in episode 3. So kind of what influenced that choice?
Yeah, that's a good question, because there's definitely both. I think both directions would have been valid. Mm-hmm. Like you say, sort of doing the Clone Wars armor has some, sort of visual symmetry with Obi-Wan being in his Clone Wars armor. Mm-hmm. What we wanted to do, I guess, was sort of represent Anakin throughout the Clone Wars rather than a snapshot of a particular time.
Right.
And watching the Clone Wars TV show, we see way sooner than Obi-Wan does. By the end, Obi-Wan is wearing his, just robes. Anakin sort of takes off that armor and switches to wearing robes most of the time way earlier in the series than Obi-Wan does. He starts wearing his regular robes, I think, in season 2, and by season 3, he's almost entirely in these. So these, in some ways, better represented that character visually. But also, we kind of wanted to intentionally reference the episode 3 Anakin, because the idea with those command cards that we'll talk about where they stay in play is that, again, just playing the character in the game kind of represents his evolution through the series. He starts off, still learning, still as a Padawan, but by the end, by Revenge of the Sith, he's a master. So our design leans a little bit towards that episode 3 Anakin, but, in a lot of ways, we kind of wanted him to also sort of span the Clone Wars as a character as well.
Awesome. Now, it was mentioned that he gains new force powers and new abilities like the longer he fights. Now, can you talk a little bit about that? I'm assuming that's command card related.
Yeah, so I can clarify that. It's not referring to literal upgrade cards that you would equip to him.
Okay.
It's sort of him, becoming more powerful in the Force, a more powerful lightsaber wielder as well, is represented by my earbud falling out.
Of course. Is that the mystery 1 pip, right?
That is the weakness. Yes, exactly. No, those cards sort of add abilities and things. So some of them may represent that Anakin is like gaining, power in the Force. But he wouldn't gain literal Force powers.
I see. Okay, so we don't have. It's not like where we saw with like Iden Versio, and where you just have other cards, which is certainly something you might see someday. That's actually a pretty cool idea.
It'd be interesting. Yeah.
All right. Well, maybe a subject for another Double Critical episode.
There you go.
Yeah. All right. So now, how do you see Anakin like playing on the battlefield? As far as is he going to be very aggressive, or is he versatile, or?
He's pretty aggressive. He's more aggressive than Obi-Wan, for sure. And I think he has. If you take Anakin as your sole commander, as we see in the Clone Wars and stuff, like he certainly leads forces. He's capable, but he leads by example. So as your commander, the way that he is going to lead is mostly just to do it himself. That's how cool. It works. That's how it works in the Clone Wars. The plans that Anakin has are generally pretty terrible, and they only work because he's Anakin freaking Skywalker,
Okay, I know, I love that.
Yeah, so he's not as, in gameplay terms, he's not as strong of a commander as some of the other characters. But he makes up for that by being such an aggressive, melee-focused character that your opponent just can't ignore.
All right. So now, if you don't take him, you mentioned taking him as your sole commander. I feel like from what we've seen of his 3 pip, he may want to have some backup. He may want to have people close by him, and so like how well do you see him pairing with? Because we don't see a whole lot. At least I don't. I should say I don't see a whole lot of people running like Dual Commander Republic. There's some, but it's because the clones are expensive. It's like it's really a tax to do that. So, like if somebody wanted to pair Anakin and Obi-Wan, or even to go further, what about Anakin and Padme, or maybe Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Padme? Like, is there a lot of synergy between them on the battlefield? Do they work well together in the game? Like, because I feel like that would be kind of thematic.
Yeah, they do. There's not like any intentional call outs. Anakin doesn't have teamwork Obi-Wan or something like that. But you might get the same sort of traction by combining those characters that you would with sort of the separatist double the fall list, where you have Grievous and Dooku, and you have two such strong melee threats. Your opponent has to it can barely deal with both at the same time. So you could certainly do that with Anakin and Obi-Wan, and Obi-Wan is going to make up for some of the deficiencies that Anakin has. Now, as you mentioned, though, it is harder to do that in a clone army, where your clones are expensive. So it's certainly possible, and I'd love to see some people do it. I think what you'll see more of, though, is what you mentioned after that, pairing Anakin and Padme.
Oh, yeah.
And that was one of my favorite lists to run in testing, was some Phase 1s, some Phase 2s, some ARC Troopers, and Anakin and Padme. I think I had like an 8 activation list that was, your sort of classic clone ball. And it was great. It was gross. It was fun.
That's nice.
Anakin, as you saw in the command card we spoiled, gets the exemplar keyword. So he can share some tokens. He's sort of a mini aggressive tactics, already just by playing that card. He still wants tokens, though, like any Jedi character.
Right.
He wants aims to reroll lightsaber dice, and he definitely wants dodges. And Padme is a great person to sort of feed Anakin those tokens because she naturally has exemplar. So there's definitely some synergy there between Anakin and Padme.
That's I can't wait to see it. I can already I can already vouch for part of this because I know I've seen Padme and Obi-Wan work together, since she just came out recently. And so, in some recent games, Sean, my friend, ran Padme and Obi-Wan, and I was like, oh man, yeah, like, oh, she's giving out dodges. They don't have to only go to clones too. And I'm like, oh man, that's really interesting, because it's been so common lately to run Rex and just kind of let Obi-Wan kind of have a vacation. And I'm like, oh, I think Obi-Wan is back now. And so, yeah, if Padme works, half as well with Anakin as she does with Obi-Wan, and my only worry, though, is that Anakin's not going to be able to force choke Padme, right? Because force choke doesn't work on operatives, and I know that's kind of like the joke a lot of people have said, but like if you did a mirror match, I don't know. Maybe it'd be a house rule, like a custom scenario, like she's the one exception, right?
Yeah, there you go.
You get in like an achievement unlocked if you're able to do that.
He has to get mad enough though to pull that off.
Maybe. No, I love the command cards. I love the permanent stuff, and I kind of want to talk a little bit more about the command cards once we get through both, because they just look really cool, and I have so much more that I could stay here and talk command cards all day long. But in the interest of time, let's talk about Maul a little bit. Oh man, I'm super happy, even though he doesn't have double crit. He's all right. So how hard was it to come up with Maul? Right, he's one of the most awesome characters of all time. Like how hard is it to try and make somebody not just be a 600 point operative? Like how hard is it to balance the greatest Sith of all time?
I would say easy to design, hard to balance. I think the more thematic a character is, the more I'm a huge Maul's awesome. I'm a big fan of Maul, and so it was very easy for me to think about what would make him sweet. How do you translate him to Legion? Like the more you're invested in the character and the more thematic a character is in their appearance in the Star Wars media, the easier it is to design him. Now the counterpoint, though, as you mentioned, is balancing is another issue. And I think. Anakin and Maul, in some ways, there's interesting because the initial concept of what they do changed very little. But they, more than any of the other things I was designing along at the same time, these two characters had the most, small iterative changes right until the end. Because again, it's these powerful characters. It's harder to get that nail on the head. But I think we got there, and there was varying opinions about how strong these characters could be. Some people thought perhaps, when testing that, Anakin should be stronger. He's Anakin Skywalker. But, what I wanted to do with him is have this sort of, as I've said with the command cards, where he grows while playing him. One of the things that lets us do is make him cost less. He doesn't, the more powerful he is, the more expensive he is, the harder he is to fit into a list with clones. Certainly the harder he would be to combine with Obi-Wan. I wanted to leave that open as an option. And then similarly for Maul, there was a lot of back and forth on like, well, how powerful should Maul be? And I felt like Maul's super cool. He should be a lot of fun to play on the battlefield, and really target other Force users. But at the end of the day, he's not Palpatine, and he gets beat. Obi-Wan beats him, I mean, yes, he takes down Qui-Gon and basically took down Obi-Wan, but still gets beat in the end. So he's not invincible.
Yeah.
So, and also him being an operative too, just not a commander. The fact that you also have to take a commander with him.
That's a huge tax, right?
Exactly, too. Meant that like it was important not to make him too expensive as well. So he's really cool and he's really fun to play. But like, I think dialing it in on the balance there so that he came out at a reasonable price was important.
Yeah. Now the other thing with making him an operative, you also tempt people like me who are foolish and just want to play the game for fun and they don't care if they lose, into running Grievous, Dooku, and Maul, right?
Oh, man, the big three.
Well, that would be all right. I don't know how much like playtesting was done with this list, but I imagine some, right? But I don't know if it's been named yet. And if it hasn't been named yet, I want to dub it Seven Sabers because there's 7 blades, right? Because he's got two, So I'd call that Seven Sabers, right? Like, because it's got the 2 S's, right? That just came to me, so I'm just brilliant.
That's
These
funny.
things come. Yeah. All right, but no, like I think that would be terribly fun and also extremely risky because you'd have no activations. But no, I love it. I love it. Now as far as like this sculpt, I'm gonna get back to mechanical stuff, but like he looks amazing. I gotta ask. I don't know if you've been able to play with a sculpt at all yet, but it looks like because he's got so many different designs that you could actually put a double-bladed saber on the back and a double-bladed saber on the front just for kicks if you wanted to. I don't know if you can confirm that or not because that's probably more of a sculpting question. But have you heard anybody talk about being able to do that?
Oh yeah, no, you totally can. It's the same torso, so
Okay.
it's just 2 different arms, or
Awesome.
4 different arms, because he also has the grip hold too. So yes, you can absolutely do that.
Theoretically, then you could probably run him with just 2 arms without any lightsabers. But
you can also do that.
the only reason to do something like that is if you were going to give him nunchucks or lightsaber nunchucks, which
yeah,
by the way,
you
you guys should totally do a lightsaber nunchuck Jedi. I don't know.
Well, get on LFL's case. Get Dave Filoni to put that in there.
I have been trying. The closest we got is a whip. But yeah, all right. So another thing that Maul has is these Sith probe droids. Well, actually, before we get into the probe droids, like how does Maul play too? I'm assuming very aggressively. Is he like similar to Anakin in some ways?
Yeah, he's similar to Anakin, not in any sort of like, well, they both have this same keyword, but you'll just naturally be playing them in similar ways.
I see.
I think Maul even more so, though, you're going to be sort of, because he's not a commander, there's no reason to keep him near any of your other forces. He is going to be getting out there, sneaking around, because as a melee user with no ranged option, he wants to get, in the melee with other people. He doesn't want to be shot at while he's on his way there. So, Maul is going to, move from cover to cover and then try and get up in your opponent's face. So
Sure.
you'll be playing a little cautiously at first with him, but then you want to, get right in there and start, slicing and dicing.
No, that sounds exciting. I looked at some of the cards, and even though we got offensive stance was kind of previewed, I think of this card as like I say that it's got Anakin's art on there, and I get that, but I feel like this one was made more for Maul because I feel like this one feels like Maul if that kind of synergizes with his playstyle a little more. I don't know if that's an accurate assessment or not, but that's kind of the way I look at it.
I think it fits with both.
Okay.
I think basically, yeah, Maul or Anakin would benefit from this. Obi-Wan would also benefit from it. Extra tokens don't hurt for sure.
Yeah, but not being able to dodge, like I feel like Obi-Wan wants to, but then again,
fair.
if he's by himself, yeah, it could be That could be very, very nice. Okay.
It depends on what you're doing. Like if you're getting in that last activation, if you're moving into somebody who's already engaged, they're not going to hit you back. So there's really no reason for you to dodge. Why would you at that point? It's the end of the round.
If you kill them, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a good point. But this ups your offensive capabilities.
And you're stuck with it the whole at the start of your activation, so you're not going to be able to go back and forth. And I think like the only person that we know of right now that is going to get a whole separate activation is Vader with his one pip. Because he can shuffle his thing back in, so he might be able to. Oh, that's cool. That's I'm about to get off topic thinking about all kinds of crazy other things, but yeah, this is interesting. Okay, so Anakin and Maul, we have basically another character that comes in these packs, and that's the probe droids. Like, how is Maul going to work with these probe droids? How can you talk about them a little bit?
Yeah, so the probe droids are kind of fun because I think that was a surprise to people for sure. A lot of you're hoping for Maul, but no one was like, and he's got to have probe droids too.
Mm-hmm.
But
sure.
When we were designing him, I was like, why not? Let's get some probe droids in there because they're cool. They're little guys, hovering around. So they're going to be a detachment.
Okay.
So you have to take Maul to get these guys, which makes sense. And it also means then that you can't field them on their own. So they're essentially unique. You're only going to see one of these units out on the battlefield, and only if Maul is there too.
Mm-hmm.
But we've mentioned the observation token, which is a thing that I'm saving for BK to have something to put in the articles. But there's
you could just spoil it right here too. I mean, like that would be. I mean, I don't know. You guys let me know in the comments if you think he should spoil. Oh, wait, this isn't live. They can't tell you right now.
They can't tell me what to do. But no, it's a token you're gonna see coming up. Not like crazy, but here and there because these aren't the only probe droids in Star Wars. These aren't the only probe droids in this wave. Even we have the Viper Recon droid with the Specialist pack.
Oh yeah.
So we wanted a mechanic for these droids to do that. They're not actively participating in battles. Maybe they could if things go wrong.
Right.
But for the most part, they want to hang back and influence the battlefield. So that's what these guys are going to be doing. They have detachments, so they'll deploy near Maul. Mm-hmm. They'll kind of skirt around, and they'll annoy your opponent.
Okay, no, that sounds good. Force them to maybe take shots at them as opposed to somebody else. And who knows?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, awesome. And there's 3 in the unit. Right, so the 3 minis.
Yep.
Okay, so
and they're special forces slot.
They're a special forces slot. Okay, so it's not going to take up your other operative slot. That comes with that. That's another opportunity cost then too, because if you wanted to run like triple sniper or something like that, now that's gonna cut into that.
It will, yeah.
Okay, I would have thought support, but there you go. Special forces, nice.
Well, support usually is things that are on a that 50 millimeter base or larger.
Okay.
So if it's on those 27 millimeter ones, it's pretty much guaranteed it's going to be a operative, a commander, special forces, or a core unit.
Okay, awesome. All right, so we got some looks at some of the different command cards. We've seen that Anakin has got a permanent, and we also got Maul, who's got some difference. He's got 2 1-pips and a 2-pip.
Yes.
And so very very much aggressive. Want to go first. Want to do the Maul. Want to maul you kind of stuff. Let's talk about, since I got Maul's up. Let's talk about Maul's first, if you can. What are his command cards doing for him?
Well, so this one is definitely meant to combat Jedi, because as I said before, like with Anakin or any Jedi, like you want these tokens, and so many of these tokens are generated by a lot of the other Jedi characters' command cards. So they have them already, at the start of a round, and the disengage there is also extremely useful for Maul. As a melee character, the worst thing sometimes is being in a melee you don't want to be in.
Right.
And if say you've gotten trapped in melee with say just some Phase 1 clone trooper unit, that's like I don't need to be fighting these right now. Obi-Wan is right over there, and Obi-Wan is the person you want to target with the second effect of this card. That disengage lets you move over to a different target.
All right.
And getting a dodge token on a 1-pip is great too, because it means like you're probably acting before that thing, and so you know that they're going to get a chance to hit you back afterwards. So this dodge token sets you up for surviving that encounter.
Right. Or if you have offensive stance equipped, since you're playing this, you're like, you know what? Now at the beginning of my activation, let me flip. All right.
Right.
Okay. So we also know that Maul has a 2-pip, and instead of a 3-pip, another 1-pip. But it was said that the other 1-pip counts as a 3-pip, similar to Han Solo's, and so we're doing some pip shenanigans. Is there anything more you can tell us about Maul's command cards, and even in without giving too much away?
Yeah, I don't want to give too much away. The most exciting thing, though, is definitely the pips, and that seemed befitting of that character. And just in general, too, like you're seeing with Anakin's permanent ones, playing with the pip values here, Anakin is going to have that flaw card. Not technically a command card, but similar. And then later stuff, too, something I wanted to do with this whole sort of wave of products I was working on was sort of break some expectations with command cards, do some new things that people didn't expect.
I love it. I love it. So we're going to see some things that we don't expect.
Well, yeah, I mean, did you expect 2 1-pips?
I did not. I did not. I love that, though. I love the idea of changing around pips and stuff. And I always thought we would see shenanigans like that when we got Lando in the game, because he's a card player, and so and of course,
very true.
For all I know, he's in the pipeline right now, and he's got crazy card shenanigans as well. But regardless of the state of that, I'm all in favor of it, because he should have, he should break some rules, because he's a cheater. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But this isn't a Lando video, so let me get back on topic. So we got Anakin's permanent. Now, I believe it was said that all of his are going to have permanent effects.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
So all 3 of his are permanent, and this is the only one that gives you 2 keywords. So you're not going to be super keyword overloaded.
Okay.
Some of them have other ongoing effects. And as I mentioned before, a little bit of this came out of the fact that there were so many great keywords that I could give to Anakin that made sense for his character. But again, you can only fit so many on a card.
Yeah.
And so from that was sort of born the idea of we have this permanent keyword. Wouldn't it be cool that Anakin sort of evolves as you play him?
That's awesome. And I think we're seeing a theme too in the last wave, and coming to this one too, is with more command card stuff. We saw with Padme's reveals, and then also, well, actually going back to Operative Vader, which was the first divulge. Yep. I mean, it was divulge before divulge was divulge, and so we were seeing new things happen with command cards, which is really cool. And then of course with Cad Bane, and that's I was like, whoa, this is gonna be fun, because you're doing cool stuff right from the beginning before you even play. And I'm like, all right, so this is and I feel like that. That it takes a good advantage of an aspect of the game that maybe was not fully tapped before, because the card game it's a card, it's not really a card game, but that's certainly an aspect to it. So
yeah, there's a little mini card game in Legion.
Exactly. Here's another question. I think it's the Imperial's 1-pip covert observation. I feel like with all this card shenanigans, a card like that was initially dismissed as being garbage is now going to see some revisitation, right? Has that been a factor? Whoa, wait, that Imperial throwaway is suddenly going to have some value now.
Yeah, it might. We'll see. Those initial command cards for those factions were, when those were designed, there was a bit of a worry that, if we just make it better than Ambush, then all you're doing is just upgrading the command cards, So those initial 1-pips, in the end, maybe came out a little bit lackluster. But for the, we will get to it, but the Separatist 1-pips were intentionally a little more exciting. Mm-hmm. A little more utilitarian for them,
but they're not as versatile too. And the same thing with the original ones. You can't just give it to a core unit. You have to give it to something you might not otherwise include in 100% of lists. So
right, we did keep that aspect of it. Yeah.
Okay. So before we move on from Anakin and Maul, I want to talk about flaw cards a little bit
Right.
because this is maybe the most exciting thing ever for me. First off, I think in some of the initial art spreads, correct me if I'm wrong here, but didn't Maul also have a flaw card?
Yeah, that was just a graphical mistake there. So Maul,
Okay,
only Anakin has a flaw card.
okay,
Maul does
great,
not.
good,
But
good information.
Anakin is not going to be the only character to have a flaw card. You know.
I mean, I love it. I've done. We talked a lot on Double Critical about like all the characters that could have flaws, and
Oh, there's a lot of them. Yeah.
there's quite a few. Yeah, and and you think about it, and you're like, there's a lot that could have had them already. And I'm like, well, that's I feel like flaws give you so much room and to grow, right? Like all right. So I'm going to set up kind of a question here, and it's more of a maybe a statement, half statement, half question.
Sure.
With Anakin being, kind of like an episode 3 Anakin, who's arguably maybe at the height of his power, I would say, isn't this almost kind of like when we did Palpatine so early in the game's life cycle? Are you doing like the end game character, within just a few waves of Clone Wars coming out? And do you think like the flaws give you the ability? Well, now we can do an episode 2, a young Padawan Anakin that maybe isn't as strong but doesn't have the flaws, so he's less risky. Do you feel like those are doors that are now open because of flaws?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. No, I think, like you said, maybe there are characters who are already out who, a version of them with a flaw card would be interesting. It's more of a snapshot of them at a particular time. And as you also said, there's plenty of characters we've not released yet who very thematically, like some sort of flaw would be fitting those characters. So the flaw mechanic itself is very open-ended. There's a lot of the rules overhead is specified on the card itself.
Right.
So the cards can be pretty versatile in what they do. The only rules that a flaw card has is that it's associated with a character. You give it to your opponent, and your opponent can play it. It's not dictated when they play it, except on the card itself. So even that can change. And just like a command card, it stays in play for that round, and then unless stated otherwise, it goes away at the end of the round. So, that's a lot of open design space for doing some interesting things.
That is very interesting. I have some guesses about Anakin's flaw card, but I've talked about him on my podcast already. So
he really hates sand. It could be.
is that it? No, that was one of the joke questions I had. Is like, is he gonna have a desert kind of weakness, or are you guys doing a sand? Is that one of the mystery? Like the thing nobody had requested for Legion was it sand. But
right, a little bag. It's a little bag of basing sand
right.
that comes in his box.
Exactly. But since suppression kind of shows up on his 3-pip, is that maybe a hint as to some of the rest of the picture with Anakin?
Oh, I will say yes.
Okay.
Good detective work there.
Yeah,
He doesn't want that suppression because something bad might happen.
Yeah, that's kind of where I thought it was going, and I'll leave it there. And if you guys want to hear my full theory, you'll have to watch the latest Double Critical because
there you go. That's a good plug.
yeah, there you go. Yeah, there you go. But I also think it's fitting that the Empire as a faction, one of their kind of things is dueling out suppression. So wouldn't it be thematic if the Empire were to do something to make Anakin, behave badly? Or I don't know. But I'll leave it there. That's just interesting. That's my guess. All right, so we'll see. Let's see. Flaws. All right. I think we covered everything I wanted to talk about on flaws. But no, these guys are really exciting. I can't wait to check out Maul and Anakin. I guess the last thing I want to talk about with these two is since we are seeing new Force upgrades and stuff here. Some people might be worried that, like, wait a second, what if I wanted to put this on another character? So I guess my question is, are we changing like the paradigm here and that certain upgrades will only be available on certain things, or is kind of the original vision still holding true as far as how you want to make things available to players who maybe only play one faction?
Right. Yeah, no, that's a great question to ask. And, the original vision holds true. We aren't interested in doing chase content in a miniatures game. Legion, people invest in this, and they put a lot into, buying these units and painting them and stuff like that. And, it's not fun to have to buy something out of faction for just an upgrade card you might want. So we're going to try and make everything as available as we can. I should make some caveats that, just generally speaking, it might be not in the same wave. It might be a wave or so later that an upgrade card is available for, one faction versus another. Certainly, even when that happens, though, we would try to, it's not going to be some like, here's a gear upgrade that every single unit with a gear thing could take, but it's only for this one faction in this one wave. You might see more restricted, more unique type upgrades available at first for one or two factions, and then we will be sure to make those come out, down the road. So sometimes there may be some waiting, but ultimately, we want to make sure that all factions have any upgrade that they could want to take available to them in one of their own products.
No, great answer. Thank you. Thank you for clearing that. Plus, we also know that, you guys have already done, an upgrade card pack. So there's nothing to stop you from making another upgrade card pack down the road as well. And
yep.
you've got 4 different factions now, too. So, I wonder if it's a little unrealistic for people to expect everything to have perfect symmetry. Like, they got a tank, so everybody needs a tank, and they need it today. I'm like, yeah, maybe the Rebels don't need that many tanks. How many did you see in the movies? So that I can see there being like, wait, just be patient. It's kind of like the theme, right? I think it's the theme of this whole year. Let's just wait it out and be patient.
That's a good point. Yeah, no, and that's a great point too. That as even some people have noticed in these last couple of waves, we're moving in some ways a little bit away from some of that symmetry that you saw initially, through the release of the original factions and into the release of the Clone Wars factions, and there's going to be waves in the future that shake up that paradigm even more. So that's a good thing to point out, that it's not always going to be perfectly symmetrical, and we'll try to do what we can. I think one of the things that I appreciate about Legion, too, is that, there aren't a huge swath of neutral upgrades you can take. It's sometimes more about the units themselves, and you sort of pepper in some upgrades here and there, or maybe one or two upgrades are kind of important for this character. But upgrades don't necessarily make Legion, Right. And the upgrades that do are often the ones that, are unique to a unit. It's this particular heavy weapon, or this particular force power for this character, things like that.
I think every unit should have access to the Z6, though. I'm just saying. But yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's a great philosophy, because that's one thing is I really feel when I'm playing a unit is each unit really has its own identity, and so that's really a fun thing. And it also probably helps narrow down some of the balance changes too. Like, hey, this unit's crazy. We need to, adjust them a little bit. But what else is that going to break? Well, it's going to break very little because so much is compartmentalized. So, all right. So let's talk about the specialist expansions, because we have them coming too. And for those who aren't familiar, we got specialist expansions for the Rebels and the Empire very early in the life cycle of Legion, and that's been one of the things I think that's been crucially missing from the new Separatist and Republic factions. Very, very excited. As far as I'm concerned, these are one of the few things that really took me by surprise, because we knew that they were coming, but I didn't. It was one of the few things I'm like, oh, this is coming too. Great. So and great timing too, because we're gonna get so many important things. So I guess as far as an overview, for somebody who's not familiar with the specialists and stuff, what would you how would you kind of describe these for maybe a newer player who's just getting into the Clone Wars?
Sure. Yeah. So these are packs of, as you can see there, 4 miniatures, and basically what they do is they give you some more upgrade options for your core units in the form of using that personnel slot that in most expansions is just like, add an extra B1, add an extra Rebel Trooper, and it has varying degrees of utility, whether you want to add that extra trooper or not. But these guys come with special abilities that actually add some extra, an X factor to your unit. Maybe now it has a medic and can heal some people. It has a engineer, it can do some repairs. But the other thing it does that, I think is important in a hobby game like this is it adds a visual diversity. When you add in a clone, or let's say the which is it, the FX9 droid, the healing droid for the Empire, just looks so crazy different. It suddenly it suddenly changes that unit's appearance on the battlefield. So adding visual diversity from the hobby perspective is also something that these upgrade card packs do. That is something that is almost equally as important as the gameplay.
And the sculpting has come a long way too. I feel like every couple of months, like I notice, like, wow, this one is so much better. Like, I think it was that Stormtrooper pack that came out a few months back.
Those were so good, yeah.
I mean, because you were seeing, like, here is, we look at the original core set, and we look at where we are now, like 2 years later, and it's become so far. And so if I think these will probably be, at least in the same ballpark as the original clones, because that was when they switched to hard plastic. Although I think the original clones were still soft plastic, weren't they?
Those were PVC. Those were the soft plastic.
Yeah. So these are probably going to look even better than your Phase 1 clones, probably on par with your Phase 2 clones.
Yep.
So really exciting. Now, we're getting the same types, right? We're getting like a leader, we're getting a medic, we're getting a repair, like an engineer, and then the comms type of those. The roles are staying the same, but there's some changes, right? Like the medics and the engineer can only heal one now?
Correct, yes. So if you are familiar with the Rebel and Imperial specialists, you know that the medic and the repair droid each heal 2 wounds, but they have a non-combatant keyword, which means they don't ever attack. So for the clones, like a pretty easy decision was, well, they should not be non-combatants. They have weapons. We see them using them in the show. There was also some concern, of course, with balance because how much that wound is worth, like points wise, like healing a wound is relative to the units around you that you're going to be healing, and same with the repair function. And in a clone army, the units around you are all generally more expensive. So a clone medic upgrade that would be able to fight and heal 2 wounds would have been, prohibitively expensive. So it seemed pretty natural to take away non-combatant, but to have them only heal 1 wound. And same with the engineer. He only repairs 1 wound.
Sure. I'll admit I had concerns as soon as I saw that there was a medic there, because part of me was like, are they going to change this enough? Because I look at clones, and like the clone ball is a very real thing, and you have like, all right, I've got all my points in this big one Z6 Phase 2 clone unit or something like that, and then I've got like 3 just cheap clone units feeding them dodges and standbys and aims, and if I could put a medic in those, and like now my alpha unit can never die, but now if they can only heal 1, there's real limits on how much you can really do that. So I feel like that was probably something that influenced part of that choice too. I'm like, do we really want these guys 2 each? And now if I was like with 3 supports, we got 6, so we're gonna heal the whole unit like, multiple times over.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and same with, you already have R2-D2 in this faction who can heal 2 wounds from a vehicle, right? Mm-hmm. So R2-D2 plus, say, an engineer that would have been able to heal 2 also is compounding that issue as well, So, again, exactly what you're saying. We don't want to, we want clones to be cool and good and awesome, and that's how they feel when you
Mission
play
accomplished. They're super cool.
But we don't want to tip that balance too far. You know? So it was important to sort of keep that balance in place.
Excellent. Now I will say I'll move on to the droids, but first I gotta say I'm really looking forward to Rex's 2-pip with every single one of my clones having HQ uplink due to the comms guy now, and just having everybody. I know that would probably eat up all of my points, but I think that's going to be a thing. I don't know. My prediction is that's going to be a thing with like lots of clones with HQ uplink. Even for fire support too. It's just it gets really expensive when you do that. I don't know. I mean, I'll talk about HQ uplink a little bit later because I have something else I want to ask about that, but we'll see. Droids are also getting theirs, and
yes.
Some people weren't sure if we were going to see a cheap droid commander. Tell us a little bit about the droid pack and what makes it a little different.
Well, we absolutely had to do a cheap droid commander. I mean, this group of products right here, these 4 products, were like, I was very adamant about us making them because I was like, we have to do these things. Yeah. This is like the fan service wave, Got to do Anakin. We've got to do Maul. We've got to do specialist packs. We can't do anything else for these factions until we get these 2 super iconic fan favorite characters, and we get these 2 really important expansions. Because a generic commander is great for the clones, because again, expensive units. It's even better for the droid army because, you want that droid horde, or you want, that double AT-AT list. Like having a 55-point commander is going to do wonders for that. So
that is going to be really interesting for sure.
Yeah, so that'll be fun. And they do have, so then their repair personnel and their medic personnel, that's a return to sort of what we've seen with the Rebel and Imperial ones, where it's a non-combatant droid and they can heal 2 wounds from vehicles and troopers respectively.
Well, you kind of have a role reversal, right? In that the heal droid can't really heal his core units. I think that's beautiful.
Yeah, it's kind of fun. And you see that I can't spoil it because I don't even remember what they are off the top of my head, but you'll see that reflected in the points cost too for these. Relatively speaking to like the Rebel and Imperial versions, the healing droid for the Separatists costs less than it should,
right,
because you have fewer targets to heal with it, and the repair droid costs a little more than it should, because those targets are plentiful and all over the battlefield.
Exactly. I felt that pain a little bit in a game where we were running supply drop as the new objective, and one of my droids, I was running droids, and he got the Bacta. I'm like, what am I gonna do with this?
He doesn't want that.
Yeah. So I'm like, wait, I've got Dooku over there. I guess I can heal Dooku, and that's kind of
hoof it over to Dooku. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Very cool. Okay, and then our instead of a comms guy, because these guys can already take comms, this is a different little like reconnaissance type droid, right?
Yeah, just a little guy. I love the sculpt for this one.
Yeah. I don't think I have a picture of him loaded up. No, I don't. But
that's all right.
He's on the box art right there.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, as I mentioned, he's going to interact with observation tokens as well. Like having this and the Sith Pro droids in the same way, it was obvious. Like, let's make a mechanic both of these guys can use.
Okay.
He doesn't have non-combatant though, so he's got a little laser that he can shoot. But definitely working on these and concepting them was a fun, like, deep dive into what are the droids in the Specialists, because in the Separatist armies, in the movies and in the Clone Wars TV show. And as I mentioned with the clone Specialist pack, this increases the visual diversity of your army, but even more so because like some of these droids are just all crazy different looking, and they don't look like B1s at all.
We got John Travolta bell-bottom commander here.
Absolutely.
And so I gotta ask, some people will probably see this spoiled card and say, why does he have a 1 on there, and why does he have sidearm ranged? Now, I don't know if the rules for sidearm have been made public yet, or I'm not sure.
Oh, they exist. They're on the they're originally on the Royal Guard unit, Imperial Royal Guards.
That's right. Okay.
The Electrostaff guy has sidearm melee, meaning he can only use the weapon on his card. So
right. Okay. So this basically, it sounds like this was put into not make B2s like totally abuse this guy.
Yes, that is 100% what it is. Okay. You hit the nail on the head. Okay. Now, at the same time, though, he is very good in a B2 squad.
He seems like he'd be good in either, but also good in a B2.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I mean, the droids, their AI ability is always a little bit mitigated whenever you can do the daisy chain of order tokens with their coordinate ability. The B2s don't have that, so they're basically a terminal unit in that link of issuing order tokens. And so, if you don't actually have to even give them one, all the better. And then similarly, that reliable one. Yes, it's good on regular it's very good on regular B1s, but the B2s, you've invested even more points into that squad. It's even a better investment with them. And also getting a red die too, on top of what the B2's attack pool already is great.
No, absolutely. A lot of times you'll sacrifice one sure thing for 2 questionable things or something like that. The AI attack, or losing AI attack, though, they still have AI move, correct? Or did you lose the whole thing? Because the B2s have...
I can check. I can check right here.
Sure.
I'm on my work computer. Let me go to my official Legion PDF library.
Sure thing.
Because I am 95% sure that they only have AI attack.
I could have sworn
correct.
They only have AI attack?
AI attack. So it completely eliminates the B2's AI. The
Okay,
droidicas have AI attack move,
so
I believe.
something happened when I first did my breakdown. This is just on me as being a big dummy, but and so you guys all can see, I'm a big dummy. It's okay. But yeah, I was looking at something, and I think I had a list builder open or whatever. And I'm like, yeah, so I don't know. And I was saying it in my commentary, like, I don't know how good these guys are going to be on the B2s, because they're still going to be stuck moving if they wanted to aim and shoot. And apparently I was mistaken. I must have been looking at a droidica unit.
You're thinking droidicas do have AI attack move.
Yeah, so I probably had a droidica unit up instead of the B2, and the hype from everything. I'm going to claim I was influenced by the hype, because that honestly happens.
That's
like I catch myself during the in-flight brief, like I catch myself kind of shaking sometimes, and it's just the hype overwhelms me. So
it's exciting stuff.
Yeah, so the commander version of this one, we haven't seen his cards. We're told that he is, as a unit, not very good, but he's going to have some keywords that kind of make up for it. How good is he going to be? Can you give us any any ideas as to how good he may be?
Well, I mean, he's certainly good. I mean,
for his cost,
I will say, yeah, he's good for his cost. He's especially good considering how bad his stats are. Because I mean, he has not a great attack, not great defense. He's mostly going to be hiding. I mean, that's what they do in the show. As soon as anyone shows up with a weapon, they're done, unless they're in a tank, which we can do that in Legion. But these guys are not fighters. Right. I mean, they can take a pot shot here and there, but no, the abilities on this guy are really is what's gonna make them. And I don't want to spoil it yet what their unit cards are, because again, I gotta save some stuff for BK to put in those articles. But sure. I will say something that I tried to do in this wave was minimize the amount of new rules, new keywords. I reused as many as I could, cut as many as I could. Maul, for example, the only new keyword he has is the Joyo Mastery, which is going to be unique to him. And the droid and the clone generic commander both have the same two new keywords, but both those keywords are very simple, and they're actually riffs on existing keywords. So you'll see it and you'll be like, oh, this is just a different version of this.
Okay.
So you can speculate on that. But they were fun to design, and it was fun to do two units that have like their text block is almost identical, but their stats are completely different. So. All
right. Awesome. So yeah, sometimes existing keywords put together in different ways can have can have beautiful results. That's kind of my takeaway from that. And that's a good takeaway. All right, so I think that kind of covers most of the stuff that was announced. The only other things, we have a points update and possibly a errata that's coming later on this year. I know it's pretty far out, but how is that coming along? Is there anything that you can share with us about that? Or?
Yeah, well, at the very least, I'd love to touch on it, since I know people are interested. It's something we're actively working on, so I can't speak to, any actual numbers or anything like that. But it is happening this year, and our goal always is to kind of do these towards the end of the year. That exact date is going to be dependent on other releases, approval timelines, things like that. Right. So, don't expect it to be at the exact same date it was last year. Expect it, Q4 this year. But I will say, I from what we're working on, I like what I see, and I think people will appreciate, some things that change up the meta a bit in good ways. It's not drastic. We try and be conservative.
Sure.
But whack-a-mole a little bit, tamp a few things down, but also raise a few things up, that we don't see as much play.
Can I make an unpopular request?
Sure, no promises, but
could you
sure.
double the point cost of Pathfinders? I have somebody that uses Pathfinders all the time, and I want to see if I can just force him into, just
I think that might be a unique problem.
It might be.
That might just be a Crabbok problem.
Exactly. Okay. So no, that's exciting. I kind of want to talk a little bit of wishlisty kind of thing. I know it had been hinted about in the past, and I'm curious, like maybe if we could get like a little progress check or a rumor control on something called subfactions. Is that still something that's a potential hopeful word for Legion players?
Yeah, well, again, it's fun to hint on it,
Hmm.
give some people some things to speculate about. I can say even less about that than I can about the points update. I will acknowledge that it has been hinted at. I
Okay.
think, maybe the little bit that I'll say is, something, sort of the concept of a subfaction, whether it's called that or not,
Hmm.
it's something you see in a lot of minis games. So it's there's a lot of different ways that other games do it. There's a lot of different ways we could do it. There's a lot of different ways, we could see, like, what does it even mean? What does a subfaction mean? So what people might have in their mind may not be what we come out with. Hopefully what we come out with is good for Legion, for Star Wars, for the game we're making in particular. So, suffice to say, we're always exploring new concepts, and we're always looking at what we can do to enhance theme, to encourage people playing towards theme. So, again, in a lot of ways, nothing is off the table,
Right.
but again, a lot of things are a ways out, and I certainly can't speak to if, when, or what, or anything in that regard.
We
But
probably don't want to expect any news on that this year. I would guess it sounds like it's a little bit farther off. I feel like though that like one of the cool things that I could address is a lot of those groups or groupings of things that while distinct maybe don't deserve their own faction, right? This came up in when I was talking to Max Brook about X-Wing, and they're adding some keywords in, and like Black Sun was brought up. Like, okay, maybe not a whole faction, maybe not, so I feel like there's so many different ways, like you said. Like some people think it's going to be like its own separate faction, or something within a faction, or maybe it's a combination of those. And so many other games are doing things like that. I feel like it was just I wanted to bring it up at least because I feel like there's hints in other games, and since Fantasy Flight is more than just Star Wars Legion, I was reminded of it recently. So I appreciate you entertaining the idea.
yeah, absolutely.
I think that's it for most of the questions. I've got a lightning round though I want to throw at you real quick, and
All right,
if you'll entertain it, the lightning
I'm
round.
ready.
The lightning round, it consists of all of those wish list expansions and things that I want, and I throw them at you in rapid succession, and you have to answer as quick as you can and tell me when we're getting them.
Okay, all right,
Okay.
here we go.
All right. First thing, when are we getting the lat?
It's not off the table.
When are we getting the at or the
Well,
AT-AT?
probably eventually.
When are we getting the rancors?
I hope to see that one
That
too.
would be fun. What about all the Jedi that we haven't got yet, like Mace Windu, Kit Fisto, Ahsoka, and all the rest? And like, there's so many.
Just play Legion long enough, they'll
They,
come out.
when are we getting Baby Yoda?
I mean, that's not off the table as well.
Legion Second Edition?
Uh,
Hopefully
Not
not.
that.
Okay, hopefully not. Okay,
Legion's doing fine.
I,
Legion's gonna be 1.0 for a long time.
that's fantastic. All right, well, I think
That's
that's
it. That's all you've got, Crabbok. All those are like normal Star Wars things.
I've got so many more ideas over on Double Critical. I think I think I've exhausted myself. Is there anything else you want to that you can share with us about the future? How I know we've got there was 4 more expansions that are going to be
Yeah.
coming. There was some jokes about the one that nobody wanted or that nobody had. You know.
Well, I hopefully when it comes out, people want it. No,
Hmm.
it's. I just haven't seen anyone guess it yet. But
Hmm.
those 4 units, 2 Rebel, 2 Imperial ones that are coming out after these products right here that we're talking about, 2021, are super exciting. I'm super looking forward to them. Like I said, it's some fan favorites and then also some unexpected things.
Oh,
So,
so there's a little bit of fan service in the remaining 4 as well.
oh, absolutely. Yeah,
Okay.
100%.
All
Yeah. Well,
right.
we want to make people happy. And again, like all of us working on this game, we're just big Star Wars nerds too. So,
Okay.
a lot of this stuff is, like we want to see it in the game, as much as fans do. And like your lightning round illustrated, there's so many awesome things we could make for this game. And there's almost nothing that's off the table. It's just a matter of time,
Mhm.
like with Anakin and Maul, yeah, there's other awesome Jedi characters we want to do too, but like, man, we got to get Anakin in the game though,
Yeah. Yeah.
So
There's certain things you have to do before. You don't wait for like the main character to the very end.
Right, exactly. Yes,
Yeah.
but there's a deep well of fan favorite things that we can do for a long time. Personally speaking, like I'm excited for when we're going to be doing more characters from Rebels, and when we're going to be doing more characters from the Clone Wars. And there's other Star Wars media as well too. So
The Mandalorian season 2 is
exactly
coming out.
the Mandalorian. Yep,
Oh,
and there's no end apparently to the Star Wars shows coming to Disney Plus. We're going to have great content coming out for those as well. I mean, the Bad Batch show that was announced. I'm sure that's going to have awesome stuff in it.
There was one more thing I wanted to ask you about, and that's about terrain. So it's not really expansion related, but we've got bigger bases coming out than we've ever seen before. And like, do you anticipate maybe adjusting terrain guidelines due to some of like the tank bases? We've got huge bases, and if terrain tables stay the same, like tanks might not be able to move everywhere. Is that something you guys are okay with? Maybe is that part of the risk reward of playing such a large unit?
Well, if you recall, there was a tournament update several months ago. The terrain guidelines we added in that update were actually in anticipation of the large tank bases. So there's a suggestion there specifically for large or medium terrain pieces to be placed at least range 1 away from each other. So that was put in there intentionally for the tanks. Now, that said, something we wanted to do, hopefully at some point, is also do some updates to the terrain guidelines that are in the rules reference, to make it more explicit for players. Since the tournament document is sort of a TO-facing document, and that's a term we use. It's the tournament organizer, a thing that they would see, whereas the rules reference is a player-facing document, and we wanted to communicate that to tournament organizers, but at some point too, it's good to also sort of like, hey players, here's the terrain you should be getting on board with. And the tournament document as well as the rules references people see are always open to being updated, and we can adapt to what players want, what's working, what's not working, that sort of thing. So something we'll be looking at, of course, is terrain. We're also keeping an eye on how MOV is working, and other things like that.
I love that, by the way. Coming from an Armada background where, like, I've always felt like MOV, at least you have some say in that, right? Like, if it's all strength of schedule, I went to a Prime one time, and I got the first round bye, which was like a 0 MOV, and I'm like, so with the number of people, like, I can't possibly make top cut now because, and I'm like, and I had no control over that, and and I feel like at least with MOV, it does change people's strategy a little bit, but it gives you more control over your own destiny to an extent.
We tried to do the Legion MOV in a way that, as much as was possible, to not influence how players are playing. It's not 100% possible to eliminate that completely with any sort of MOV. But we worked on something for quite a while. And it was actually a Legion player, John Bushman, who sort of had the initial concept for an MOV, and we took that and I talked with him directly, and then we tested and worked with OP on a version of that sort of accommodated some other intricacies, like how do you do a concession or a drop or things like that. So it gets complicated, and we tried to come up with a system that we thought would work as best we could, with the knowledge though that we're going to pay attention to it and see how it's actually working. But you're absolutely right. Strength of schedule it's certainly not. It's not fun for games with so few rounds.
There's some cases where it could be preferable, but
if you're playing a card game where you can get in, you can get in 6 rounds in a tournament before even getting to the cut, then like sure, whatever, do strength of schedule.
Right.
But it was something we wanted to try a different version of if we could for Legion. If MOV is not working, we can always switch back to strength of schedule. It's at the very least, it's the devil we know.
Right. Well, do you ever thought about I know one thing that we do here in Orlando sometimes for Armada, because the games take so long, is sometimes we'll run 2-round tournaments. They're not super competitive; they're more casual, but because we have MOV there, it actually allows you to pick a winner. It's not always perfect, but it's certainly what other way could you do if you're only playing 2 games?
Well, and I mean, similar to that too. Like ideally, you play enough games of Legion that you don't need strength of schedule or MOV. You don't need a tiebreaker. But to do that adequately, you almost have to have 2 days. And like, if I'm a dedicated Legion player, like, man, that sounds great. Sign me up. Legion for 2 days, it's great. But there's so few. Like, if you're talking about a store running a tournament, they only have so much space. It's very, very hard for them to do. So, you want to try and accommodate all levels of ability for places to run tournaments.
Awesome. Well, shoot, I could sit here and talk with you all day, but I don't want to take up too much of your time. But I really want to thank you for hanging out with us today. And I don't know. I don't think I have any more questions. Is there any last things that any crazy spoilers you want to throw at me right at the end?
No crazy spoilers. But I do want to say it's been a pleasure as well, Tim. It's been great to hang out and then chat a bit about Legion.
Absolutely. It's hey, talking Star Wars and gaming, combining them the two is like my favorite thing to do. So thank you, Luke, for hanging out with me. Thank you for Fantasy Flight Games and you and Legion and Alex too. Pass on my thanks to Alex as well. And I that's about it. All right. Well, thank you so much and peace. May the Force be with you.
See you, dude. Thanks.